What happened to the life you once dreamed about, the life you swore you'd create, the promises you whispered to yourself late at night when no one was watching? Today, I'm going to challenge you to face that question head on, because the answer will decide the rest of your life. There was a time when you looked at life with fire in your eyes. You had dreams that stretched beyond your circumstances, promises you made to yourself in silence, visions so clear they felt more real than the ground beneath your feet. But somewhere along the way, you let the world convince you to shrink. You traded passion for comfort, dreams for distractions, and fire for fear. And yet, deep down, that voice inside you hasn't died. It still whispers, what about the life you promised yourself? That's the question you can't ignore, because if you keep ignoring it, one day, regret will be louder than your excuses. Today, I'm here to wake that fire back up, to remind you of the life you said you'd build, and to show you how to step back into it before it's too late. Stay with me, because this may be the turning point you've been praying for. Broken promises to ourselves are the most painful because they don't disappear when we ignore them. They follow us, echoing in the back of our minds every time we lay down at night, every time we look in the mirror, every time we see someone else living the kind of life we once swore we would create. Facing the broken promises begins with telling yourself the truth without sugarcoating it. Most people lie to themselves every day just to survive. They tell themselves they're okay when they know they're not. They convince themselves that they'll start tomorrow when they've already said that 100 times. They cover the sting of disappointment with distractions, scrolling, watching, eating, buying things they don't need, all because the reality of their broken promises is too heavy to face. But here's the truth. Until you confront that weight, you'll never rise above it. That heaviness in your chest, that nagging voice that keeps whispering, you were meant for more. That's the signal that you've abandoned your own word. And when you can't trust your own word, how can you trust yourself to build anything lasting? Think about the promises you've broken to yourself. You said you'd take better care of your health, that you'd stop treating your body like a machine that can run on fumes. You said you'd wake up earlier, that you'd start writing that book, that you'd build that business, that you'd make more time for your kids, that you'd take your faith seriously, that you'd stop procrastinating. And maybe you even started once or twice, but then you slipped. And instead of getting back up, you told yourself, maybe later. Every one of those maybes stacked up like bricks on your back until now it feels normal to walk hunched over, carrying the weight of what you didn't do. But normal doesn't mean right. It just means you've gotten used to living below your own word. And if you're honest with yourself, the pain isn't that you failed, it's that you stopped trying. What happens when you keep breaking promises to yourself is deeper than most people realize. It destroys your self-respect. Every time you say you'll do something and don't, a small part of your belief in yourself erodes. You don't trust your word anymore. And because of that, you start lowering your standards without even noticing. You stop dreaming as big because you know you won't follow through. You stop expecting more from yourself because you've built a track record of letting yourself down. That's why people shrink. That's why people look back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later and realize nothing really changed. It wasn't the world holding them back. It was the fact that they couldn't keep their own promises long enough to build trust with themselves. But here's the thing about facing broken promises. It's not about beating yourself up. It's not about drowning in guilt or shame. It's about acknowledging the truth so you can finally create change. When you finally say, yes, I've broken my word. Yes, I've let myself down. Yes, I've abandoned my commitments. Something powerful happens. You stop running. You stop numbing. You stop pretending. And in that moment of honesty, you reclaim your power. Because as long as you're lying to yourself, you're powerless. But the second you tell the truth, you open the door to possibility again. You can't fix what you won't face, but once you face it, you can begin to rebuild. Facing the broken promises also means forgiving yourself, but not in the soft, empty way people talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness here is a commitment to stop repeating the same cycle. It means you say, I forgive myself for abandoning my word, but now I'm going to prove to myself that I can keep it. And proving it doesn't mean massive leaps in one day. It means small, consistent actions that begin to restore trust. If you promised yourself you'd work out, then go for a walk today, even if it's only 10 minutes. If you promised yourself you'd wake up earlier, set the alarm and get up tomorrow, even if you only gain 30 minutes. If you promised yourself you'd build that business, start with one phone call, one plan, one step. The size doesn't matter. The consistency does. Each time you follow through, you lay a brick of integrity back in place, and slowly you rebuild the foundation of self-trust that you've lost. Most people underestimate how powerful it is to keep even the smallest promise to themselves. They think big dreams require massive leaps, but the truth is, big dreams are only built on the accumulation of small, kept promises. When you say you'll do something and you actually do it, your brain records it as evidence that you can be trusted, and the more evidence you stack, the more momentum you build. Before long, the very promises that once felt impossible now feel natural because you've trained yourself to believe again. Facing the broken promises is the hardest part, but it is also the most liberating, because once you're honest, you no longer have to hide. You can stop pretending, stop numbing, stop making excuses. You can start building again, and the life you promised yourself will no longer feel like a distant dream, but a reality waiting for you to show up with integrity. Settling for good enough is one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into because it disguises itself as success. On the surface, you might have a stable job, a decent home, maybe a circle of people who say you're doing fine, but deep down, you know you are living far beneath the life you promised yourself. Good enough isn't failure in the traditional sense. It's more deceptive than that. Failure is obvious, it hurts, it stings, and it often pushes you to try again. But good enough is comfortable. It lulls you to sleep. It whispers, "Why push harder? You already have more than most people." And because you listen to it, you stop chasing excellence, you stop stretching, and you stop growing. Before long, the fire inside you that once craved greatness turns into a dim glow that just keeps you surviving. It's not the pain of failure that robs most people of their potential, it's the comfort of mediocrity. The danger of good enough is that it convinces you to settle for a fraction of what you're capable of. You tell yourself you're satisfied because you have stability, but at the same time you feel restless, frustrated, even resentful of yourself for not doing more. You've probably caught yourself scrolling through your phone, seeing people who dared to go after their dreams and feeling a mixture of envy and guilt. Envy because you know you could have done something similar. Guilt because you realize you didn't act when you had the chance. Good enough chains you to the middle. You're not miserable, but you're not fulfilled either. You're not failing, but you're not winning. You're not alive, but you're not dead. And that limbo is where dreams go to die, not with a loud crash, but with a slow fade into mediocrity. Think about it. Every breakthrough in your life came from refusing to settle. You learned to walk because crawling wasn't enough. You pushed through school because being uneducated wasn't enough. You got your first job because having nothing wasn't enough. Growth has always been about reaching beyond your comfort. But somewhere along the way, you decided that once you reached a certain level of stability, that was all you needed. You stopped asking, what more am I capable of? And started asking, how can I maintain this? Maintenance is the killer of momentum. The moment you stop pursuing growth, you start decaying. Good enough is a mask that hides that slow decay. You may even defend your good enough life by comparing yourself to others. You say, well, at least I have a job, at least I have food on the table, at least I'm not struggling like so many people. And while gratitude is powerful and necessary, using gratitude as an excuse to avoid growth is toxic. Gratitude should inspire you to do more, not justify staying stuck. Being thankful for where you are doesn't mean you stop climbing. It means you appreciate the view while reaching for the next peak. Too many people misuse gratitude as a shield to protect themselves from the discomfort of growth. But let's be real. If you're truly honest with yourself, gratitude doesn't erase the longing for more. You know you're capable of more, and that whisper inside you, the one that says you're settling, never goes away until you answer it. The truth is, the life you promised yourself was never about good enough. It was about greatness. You didn't imagine yourself as a child just surviving day to day. You imagined yourself thriving, leading, creating, building, impacting. That vision you once held wasn't arrogant. It was your soul recognizing your true capacity. But life has a way of beating that vision down with disappointments, setbacks, and voices telling you to be realistic. So you shrink your dreams to fit your circumstances instead of expanding your actions to fit your dreams. That's how good enough becomes the ceiling of your life. You build a cage out of comfort, lock the door with fear, and then decorate it so you forget it's a prison. Escaping good enough requires courage because it means stepping away from certainty. It means you're willing to risk failure, to face discomfort, to stand out from the crowd. It means admitting that the safe life you've built is not the life you truly want. And that's terrifying because it means shaking the very foundation you've relied on. But what's more terrifying, risking failure while chasing greatness, or living the rest of your life knowing you had the chance but never took it. Regret is the real enemy, not failure. Failure gives you lessons. Regret gives you nothing but a lifetime of wondering what could have been. The life you promised yourself requires you to reject good enough. It requires you to redefine your standards and stop playing small. Every time you feel yourself saying, this is fine, this is enough, you need to ask, is this really what I envisioned? Or am I just afraid to demand more of myself? Because your brain and body adapt to whatever standard you set. If you set good enough as your standard, you'll live there forever. But if you raise the bar, your actions, your mindset, and your results will rise to meet it. Settling for good enough might keep you comfortable today, but it will cost you the extraordinary life you once promised yourself. And when you weigh those two options, temporary comfort versus lifelong fulfillment, the choice becomes painfully clear. There was a time in your life when your vision was crystal clear, when you could see yourself achieving things so big they made your heart race. As a child, you never thought in terms of limits. You dreamed with reckless abandon. You wanted to be a creator, a leader, an innovator, someone who left their mark on the world. That vision wasn't foolish. It was pure. It was your soul's way of showing you who you really are and what you're meant to become. But somewhere along the journey, that clarity got clouded. Life happened. People told you to be realistic, to tone it down, to stop dreaming so big. Maybe you heard it from teachers, from family, from friends, or maybe you told it to yourself after disappointment or failure. Slowly, you stopped connecting with that original vision and you started building a life that was safer, smaller, more predictable. The problem is that vision never went away. It's still there, waiting for you to wake it up, and until you reconnect with it, there will always be a part of you that feels restless and unsatisfied. Reconnecting with your original vision means daring to dream again, not in a vague or abstract way, but in a concrete, vivid way. Your brain doesn't chase possibilities, it chases certainty. That's why most people never change. They know what they don't want, but they've stopped being clear about what they do want. They let their vision fade into the background, and as a result, their actions lose direction. If you don't know where you're going, how can you expect to get there? The vision you once had is not lost. It's buried under layers of fear, doubt, and conformity. You have to strip those layers away and remember what it felt like to want something so badly you couldn't stop thinking about it. Think back to those moments when you were excited about the future, when you felt alive, just imagining what could be. That energy wasn't childish, it was truth. And reconnecting with that truth is the fuel you need to break out of the cage you've built around yourself. One powerful way to reconnect with your vision is to write it down as if it already exists. Don't just say, I want to be successful or I want to be happy. That's vague, and vagueness kills motivation. Instead, get specific. What does success look like to you? Is it building a business that impacts thousands of lives? Is it creating financial freedom for your family? Is it standing on a stage, teaching, leading, inspiring? Is it traveling the world, giving back, living fully alive? Close your eyes and see it in detail. What do you look like? What do you sound like? What do you feel like? What are you surrounded by? The clearer your vision, the more magnetic it becomes. When you can see it, smell it, hear it, and feel it, it becomes so real in your mind that your body begins to move toward it automatically. That's how the human mind works. It pulls you towards certainty. If your certainty is mediocrity, you'll live there. But if your certainty is greatness, your actions will align with it. Another step to reconnecting with your vision is to speak it out loud. Most people keep their vision hidden because they're afraid of judgment. They don't want to be laughed at, doubted, or criticized, so they bury their dreams where no one can see them. But hiding your vision is like hiding a seed and expecting it to grow without sunlight. Speaking it out loud gives it power. It holds you accountable. It forces you to commit to it, even if only in your own ears at first. There's something powerful about declaring, this is who I am, this is where I'm going, this is the life I am building. Every time you say it, you strengthen your belief. Every time you speak it, you silence the doubts. Words create worlds, and the more you speak your vision, the more real it becomes. Of course, reconnecting with your vision doesn't mean the path will be easy. In fact, the clearer your vision, the more resistance you may face, both from the outside world and from within yourself. People around you may not understand. They may project their own fears onto you. They may try to talk you out of it because it makes them uncomfortable to see someone chasing what they abandoned. But remember this, your vision was not given to them. It was given to you. They don't have to understand it. They don't have to support it. They don't even have to believe in it. All that matters is that you see it and that you fight for it. And as for the internal resistance, the fear, the doubt, the self-sabotage, that's simply your brain trying to keep you safe. But safe doesn't fulfill you. Safe doesn't honor the life you promised yourself. Safe doesn't make history. When you reconnect with your original vision, something inside you shifts. Your energy changes, your focus sharpens. You stop settling for distractions that numb you because you have something bigger pulling you forward. You stop making excuses because the vision becomes non-negotiable. And the beautiful thing is when you start living with vision again, the people around you notice. You inspire them without even trying. You become proof that it's possible to rise above the noise, to refuse the ordinary, to chase something extraordinary. And the ripple effect of that decision goes far beyond you. It impacts your family, your community, even generations after you. That's the power of reconnecting with your vision. It's not just about you living a better life. It's about you living the life you were meant to live so that others can believe it's possible for them too. Excuses are some of the most dangerous lies you tell yourself because they sound so convincing, and they always have just enough truth in them to feel justified. When you say, I don't have time, it feels real because your schedule is busy. But the truth is, you've always found time for what matters most to you. When you say, I don't have the money, it feels real because your bank account might not be overflowing. But the truth is, you've spent money on things you prioritized, whether it was entertainment, comfort, or convenience. When you say, I don't know how, it feels real because you may not have the skills yet. But the truth is, you've learned countless things in your life when you had no idea where to start. Excuses always sound rational, but what they really are is protection. They protect you from discomfort, from failure, from rejection. They allow you to stay in the familiar, even when the familiar is killing your dreams. Breaking the pattern of excuses requires brutal honesty and a willingness to call yourself out when you start hiding behind reasons that don't hold up under scrutiny. Breaking excuses also means shifting the language you use. Language shapes your reality, and the words you speak either limit you or liberate you. If you say, I can't, your brain shuts down and looks for evidence to prove it. But if you change it to, how can I? Your brain starts searching for solutions. If you say, I don't have time, and your brain accepts it as final. But if you say, it's not a priority, you immediately see whether or not that feels true. Most of the time, it won't. And that realization forces you to stop lying to yourself. Words expose the real reasons behind excuses. The moment you change your language, you expose whether you're truly limited or just choosing not to act. And most of the time, you'll realize it's the latter. One of the most common excuses is the fear of failure. People tell themselves, I can't start because I don't want to mess it up. But the irony is, by refusing to start, you've already failed. You've failed by default. Failure isn't in the trying, it's in the avoiding. Every person you admire, every success story you've ever looked up to, every innovator, every leader, every creator, they all failed, sometimes publicly, sometimes painfully, but they didn't let failure become their excuse to quit. They let it become their teacher. The only reason you believe excuses about failure is because you've trained yourself to see failure as permanent instead of as progress. Once you reframe failure as a stepping stone instead of a stopping point, excuses lose their power. Another layer of excuses comes from blaming circumstances or people. You say, I would if my boss supported me, if my family believed in me, if the economy were better, if I lived somewhere else. That's the voice of someone giving their power away. The moment you put responsibility in someone else's hands, you hand over control of your destiny. And here's the truth. The world is full of people who had less support, fewer resources, harsher circumstances, and they still found a way. They refuse to let excuses dictate their future. They realize that excuses may explain your situation, but they don't excuse you from responsibility. You can acknowledge your challenges without surrendering to them. The second you take ownership, you cut the legs out from under your excuses. Breaking the pattern of excuses also requires accountability. Left alone, the human mind will always look for comfort, and excuses are the quickest path to comfort. That's why you need systems, environments, or people who won't let you slide back into your old stories. When you surround yourself with people who challenge your excuses instead of co-signing them, you grow. When you set up an environment that forces you to follow through, like scheduling workouts with a friend, investing money into your education, or committing publicly to a deadline, you eliminate the option of falling back on I'll do it later. Accountability doesn't remove excuses, but it makes them too costly to keep. At the core, breaking excuses is about shifting from victim to creator. Victims use excuses to explain why life is happening to them. Creators take responsibility and decide how they will shape their lives regardless of the circumstances. You can't be both at the same time. Every excuse you cling to reinforces the victim identity. Every time you refuse to hide behind an excuse and take action anyway, you strengthen the creator identity. and your identity dictates your destiny. If you want the life you promised yourself, you can't afford to let excuses run the show. You have to break the pattern, call yourself out, change your language, reframe your fears, take ownership, build accountability, and step fully into the role of creator. Only then do excuses lose their grip, and only then do you begin to build momentum toward the life you once swore you'd live.